Well, now you have to repeat it again about how handsome I am. I need that endorsement on LinkedIn.
Add it to your LinkedIn, dude. Yeah, man. How's everything? How you been since we talked last week or two ago?
I've been all right. It's like same old. Same old
shit.
Yeah, same old bullshit.
I heard that, man. All right, what's up, UX fam? How's your mom and them? Welcome to a special episode of Beyond UX Design. This week is Mental Health Awareness Week. And I was talking to my good buddy, Hong Shu, and we decided to do something a little bit different today. So I'm going to buck my corporate overlords. So there won't be any sponsorship. Sorry, Wix. I'll get back to you. We'll add another week to the contract. And so we're going to just hang out and talk about mental health today and how mental health has impacted us in our work and our lives and what we're doing to maybe just like, I don't know, try to be normal and try to just live our lives best we can and not get burnt out and, I don't know, jump off of a bridge or something. I don't know. So we're going to talk about all that today, and we're skipping the intro. So there's no sponsorship stuff today. If you want to support the show, your chances are you've already done it. Thank you for everybody who has. And you know, all the other stuff, you can go listen to the other episodes. So we're not doing all the intro stuff today. So Hong, welcome to Beyond UX Design, joining the very exclusive repeat guest club. It's you and a few others. So let's see. I can't even Jeff White, Hong, Chris, Wynn, you. Debbie Levitt's going to be on a second time in a couple of weeks. Nice. So it's a very exclusive club. I hope that makes you feel warm and fuzzy inside. Does that make you feel warm and fuzzy inside?
I'm incapable of feeling that, but I can envision it. And you know, we're gonna work some way to fold Wix into the conversation later, and I think that's actually a better way of introducing it. So I'm gonna give you a code word like Wix. And then you have to
read. That's a safe word.
Yeah, no. When I yell out the word Wix out of nowhere, you would then need to read out the spiel you had originally for Wix, and you cannot miss a beat when you do it. So I'm going to find the most inopportune moment for you to do that, and then.
Oh, that's so funny. I actually don't have any of that crap memorized. I've been doing it for months now, and I still have to read the script every time.
Okay, well, just copy and paste it, put it on your desktop, and then when I say Wix, just read from it in your podcast voice.
All right, today we're going to do something different. I like your idea. We're just going to say, fuck it. We're just two friends talking about mental health, happen to be UX designers, and how that impacts their work and all that shit. Anything you don't want to talk about? Is there anything that you feel uncomfortable talking about? And we won't go there.
Trevor, my mortal enemy, Trevor. No, I'm an open book. I actually think it's important that we don't have any boundaries when we talk about this kind of stuff. And yeah, I appreciate, you're able to just kind of go with the flow and like, yeah, let's do this. And
yeah, man,
we can just chit chat about random stuff.
It's my show, dude. I do it all
random stuff.
This is what I tell everybody else. If it ends up being absolutely awful, just we'll post it.
It's never going to be awful.
It's going to be great. I'm excited. All right, dude. So I'm just going to skip the intro. And I'm just going to I'm going to read like just a thing. And what are you laughing about?
You do have a podcast voice. There's a Jeremy friend voice, and then there's a podcast voice. It's like a therapist with a therapist voice, and then a friend voice.
How's it like? Okay, give me an example.
All right, I'm going to read out. There's no way you talk to your friends this way.
What do you mean? I don't have any friends, huh? That's like the thing. I don't have any friends. So
this is why my mental health is suffering, because you denied being my friend.
We are friends, actually.
Thank you.
It's funny. My wife makes fun of me all the time because she always makes fun of my LinkedIn friends and my Slack friends.
How dare she?
I know. I was like, you know what? These are my friends. Like, they're no different than like the friends you like chat with on text or whatever that like from back in New Orleans. Like, how's that different?
Once in a while, somebody from LinkedIn would come to New York City, and then we would hang out, and I would book something on my calendar.
Friend, yeah.
Yeah, I would book something on my calendar. It's like a dinner with, so-and-so.
Yeah.
And my wife, Becca, would be like, who's that? And I'm just like, how do I answer that? Like, who is, like, Ryan's coming tonight. Ryan from Seattle. And,
right on.
Yeah, and I was like, Ryan from LinkedIn. And she's like, who's that? And then I'm like, how do I explain this to her? Like in a way that,
Well, so like you get to go to like these conferences and stuff. So at least you could like say, oh, I met him at a conference, or oh yeah, just like into someone I met through like the industry or something. I don't know.
yeah, like Ryan and I met up in Berlin and we've chatted maybe a few times over LinkedIn, over like the comments section.
Yeah. That counts.
This is like AOL, right? Like, we met in the chat room, and our first question is ASL, and that's like if you're old enough for that shit. ASL means something very different now. But
what does ASL mean?
I don't know. I gotta Google this. I'm not Gen Z. Like I heard it meant something else, because if you say like age, sex, location nowadays, it's like that's creepy. But back then, it like made a lot of sense.
Am I talking to like a 40-year-old man, or am I talking to like a 15-year-old girl? I don't.
Does it matter? Oh, it does. Oh, wait, it does. When you're a kid.
Yeah, when you're a kid.
I was like,
the age is important, if nothing else.
I was like 11. It's like you'll figure out pretty quickly. I'm like an 11-year-old. But anyway, my wife asks me like, who's Ryan? And I don't know how to answer that. So nowadays, I read out their LinkedIn profile to her. So for the tagline, Ryan is an experienced product designer who's worked previously at Airbnb and now has his own consultancy. So and she just gets like really angry when I do that. I'm like, how do you want to explain this shit? I don't know Ryan that well, like outside of LinkedIn. So like
that's why we're going to dinner. We can like hang out and get to know each other. Yeah.
My persona of Ryan is just like LinkedIn avatar.
Well, if I ever go to New York, I'm looking you up, and we're gonna hang out and do fun
I can't wait
stuff.
to read the intro for Beyond UX to my wife. Explain to her who Jeremy is that way.
Show her. You could show her the picture of me dancing in that Christmas sweater. It's very affable.
But you're 4 years older than me. But I think you look better than I do. You look younger.
No way. All this gray, dude. Look at all this gray. Yeah, gray. I mean, there's no way. I mean, like my hair is starting to recede here. I'm getting like thin. It's thinning out.
Starting to recede. Fucking Ryan Gosling hair here. It's like, it's starting to recede a little bit. Oh, fuck you, dude.
Read the room, Jeremy. All right, sorry. That was inconsiderate of me. Sorry.
I don't care.
Read the room, J-Dog. All right, so you mentioned this earlier, and at some point we're going to get into mental health stuff, but I think this is part of coping. We're coping. I don't think I have a podcast voice, but you insist that I do.
You have a dad voice.
When you say that, what is that? Like, what an example?
Do you talk to your kids the same way you talk to me?
I mean, how do I talk to you? That's like, I don't even realize that I'm doing anything special.
You're relaxed. You're fun.
I mean, I try to be fun with my kids, except 80% of the time, they don't listen.
And then you use your dad voice. You're like,
I use my dad voice. My
Jeremy
wife actually,
Jr.
Yeah, Jeremy.
Listen.
Jeremy Jr., get in here now. My wife always like gets mad at me because like she'll end up like yelling at the kids, and then I'll come in and like make a joke or I sing. I do like singing a lot where like instead of telling them to do something, I'll sing it. So I'll be like, it's time to put on your shoes, time to put on your shoes, and she gets really mad because she's like, I have to be the bad guy all the time. And you come in here and you just start joking around and they laugh and I never get to be the fun. I never get to be the fun parent. I was like, we could play good cop, bad cop. You just got to
I think she's jealous that she can't sing. Can she sing well?
She can sing. She can sing. Yeah, she can sing.
As well
she doesn't
as
think
you
she can.
Can she like riff,
I don't know. Maybe not. I think she can. She's very creative, actually. She can. If she
Do you have a poop song to get the kids to poop?
Song. The kids have poop songs. I don't have a poop song. I try to like actively get them to stop with the poop jokes because it's like one of those things when you have kids, like boys. I have 2 boys. So it's just poop jokes all the time.
Yeah.
And at first, they're very funny. But then I make the mistake of laughing. And then they just try to get me to keep, and then it's over and over and over and over again. And then it just gets like, I'm like, guys, this was funny 2 hours ago. It's not funny anymore. Please stop.
You can't show weakness, Jeremy.
I know, man. That's the problem. The kids, man, they're just so cute. They're so cute. And I don't know, man. It's hard, but anyway, my wife gets mad. So anyway, I'd have a dad voice circling back to this. Sometimes I yell. Here's the thing. Let's talk about mental health. Because here's the thing. My dad was a Marine sergeant. And, he went to Vietnam when he was like 17. Just a fucking miserable son of a bitch.
Yeah.
And like just all the time. I mean, just like when I was a kid, I got spanked, belt, shoes, whatever, bad grades, spanked, got in trouble in school, spanked. I don't know, threw something I wasn't supposed to, or did something I wasn't supposed to, spanked, yelled all the time. And so like when I decided to have kids, I'm like, I am not going to do that. I mean, like, spanking and stuff and screaming, yelling. And of course, like I've never actually spanked the kids before, but I yell all the freaking time, like so hard.
Yeah.
I've like gotten better at it than over the last few years because I've tried to be more conscious of it. But the way like my parents treated me when I was a kid has impacted me as an adult for sure. I've never actually yelled at anybody at work or anything, but like my kids and stuff, like, I don't know, dude. I just like, it's so hard. Maybe because like you're so comfortable around your family and you kind of let your guard down, or you let your facade, maybe is a better word. You let your facade down and, it gets like really difficult to control those emotions and stuff. Yeah. Especially I think if you're used to parents treating you that way, you just assume that's the way you're supposed to treat your kid. And I don't know, it took a lot. I'm still not perfect, obviously, but I don't know. Anyway, it took a lot to like figure that out.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever
progress
that, but like
over perfection.
Yeah, for sure. Dude.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. It sounds like you're a great dad. I don't know how you did it though, because it's not easy to go from having imperfect parents and then trying to be better than they are, because I'm terrified of having kids.
My wife and I, when we had kids, we decided like we were going to treat our kids very differently than the way our parents treated us. And I think part of it too is, our parents are baby boomers, born in my parents were born in the 40s. I think Amy's parents were born like late 40s, early 50s, if I'm not mistaken. I think her dad was born in the 40s, mom was born in the 50s. So like baby boomer generation. And, the way they raise their kids, very different from the way that millennials and those types, like the newer generations, I guess, raised, or even from the way I think Gen X raised their kids. We've read a lot of articles, and it's funny because a lot of people have written about how parents will overcorrect and go too far, and try to be like overly supportive, and then they end up like overly protective, and they end up becoming like helicopter parents, or giving too much affection and too much love and too much protection and all this stuff. And it actually has a negative effect on their kids. But anyway, I don't know, being a parent is freaking weird.
That's kind of heartening to hear for me, because I cannot wait to be the most supportive parents ever after overcorrecting. I mean, I think at the end of the day, dude, it's just like being there for them. I think that's all they want, just being supportive, but like at the same time, not like giving them whatever they want and spoiling them and, like, oh, I never had anything when I was a kid, so I'm going to buy you like every Lego set you could possibly want because I didn't have Legos when I was a kid. Like that's not helpful either. It's like any other relationship, you have to work at it. You know what I mean? Did you get a lot of Legos when you were younger?
Not really.
Yeah.
I mean, I ended up collecting a lot of Legos over time, but they were very expensive, and I only got them on like, special occasions. Christmas, I'd get a set or two or something, but I didn't just get like random Lego sets throughout the year, Yeah,
same. How many Lego sets do you have now?
I don't know how many I have, but I have all of my Lego sets at my mom's house still. I was so anal about Legos, dude. Like I would build the Legos and I wouldn't take them apart. And I was like, This is, I don't know, my left brain, right brain, I don't know what side of the brain is, but I never made random stuff with my Legos. Like I followed the instructions, I kept it together, and I played with the stuff put together. You know what I mean? Like I didn't like take it apart and rebuild random stuff. So I kept the boxes. I kept the instructions. I have all my Lego sets separate, and so I never mixed and matched. And I don't know like how many Legos. I have probably like a couple of bins worth of Legos, which I think is probably still less Legos than my kids already have. At 6 and 8. Actually, I thought about bringing my Legos home to Kentucky for my kids, but then I was like, they're just gonna mix them up and like mess them up. And like, I might as well just buy them random Legos and not even worry, because they don't even like they build it and then take it apart and then you never see the thing again. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. What's the point? I might as well just not buy it. So,
I think I have probably fewer than 5 sets of Legos in total. So I didn't have a choice. You have to get some kind of replay value out of it. You gotta have to mix and match and make new things, because there's only so many times you can make a race car. You disassemble it and you make another race car. Like why? But that's the fun part.
Yeah, I don't know. I had more than 5, so I don't know. Yeah, but this is interesting because it's all like relative, right? Like I didn't think I had a lot, but clearly I had more than others. But I don't know. But that's interesting because that's like part of being a parent, is making your kids appreciate the fact that like they're always better off than somebody else. Even though you don't think you have a lot, you're better off than somebody.
That's actually the root of a lot of the therapy sessions I go to.
Really?
So my parents grew up in the 50s in China. I think they were born in like 54, 56. And then in 1960 in China, there was a massive famine that was very much government created by Mao and his like 10-year plan, which was just like catastrophic. He did a bunch of like dumb things like, let's kill all the sparrows, let's kill all the birds because they're eating off the seeds. And they're ignoring the fact that the birds, yes, they might eat up a few seeds here and there, but they also kill all the pests like the locusts. And, and what happened was that these policies ended up starving millions of people to death. Like, I think conservatively, it's like 20 or 30 million people died of starvation in China during that time.
Holy crap!
And it's like crazy. It's fucking crazy. And my parents grew up during that time. When I was younger, when I complained about anything, their response was, we didn't have food growing up. And now like trumps everything.
Okay.
Like you and I, like we've been maybe hungry before because we forgot to eat. We were working so hard, we forgot to eat, or like food wasn't readily available within reach. So we didn't eat until 5 p.m. And it's like, oh, you had lunch at 5, you poor thing. And like I've never gone a whole day without eating before, unless I was like really sick or something. And apparently,
I don't think
like
either, yeah.
when you talk about famines, it's more than one day, right? It's more than one day, and like it's something that I cannot imagine. Like I have no concept of what that could be like. And my mom would tell me fucked up stories like, people were grinding up tree bark to eat into paste. And then I'm like fucking 10 years old. And she's like telling me like, oh, there was also cannibalism involved. And there's like graphic stories about it. And I'm just like, and looking back, I'm like, what the fuck? I'm not done yet, Jeremy. I know you're like, okay, stop, Hank.
I would never.
I think a lot of other Chinese Americans my age might feel similarly because after that, my parents went through the Cultural Revolution, which makes no fucking sense at all to non-Chinese people. It's like, oh, what did you do? You rounded up all the intellectuals and killed them, and the bourgeois. No, not only did you kill them, you imprisoned them, and then you will like march them on stage in dunce caps and then beat the shit out of them to death. And for my parents, it meant that because my mom was like kind of her father, my grandfather was like a factory or landowner, so they were fucked.
So they own property.
So the whole family got sent to the countryside, and my mom was like working on a commune at like age 12 or something by herself, like no family, and you're like with strangers, and you're just working from sunrise to sundown, no schooling allowed because they shut down all the schools. It's like everyone, you need to get re-educated by, becoming proletariat, becoming a farmer. Like there's no more non-farming, there's no more dishonest work where you capitalize on other people's labor, right? My dad got sent to a factory when he was like 11 or 12 to basically be a blacksmith, like working on wrenches and hardware tools. And he was telling me how a lot of people who were sent there were like convicts. And I'm just like, that is not a safe environment.
He's 12?
A 12-year-old to be alone by themselves, right? So that's kind of like their story. And like there's a lot of, I would say, generational trauma. And that's kind of the anyway, to tie back to what you're saying in terms of relativity, that's kind of the theme that I ask on my therapy sessions, which is the abuse that I suffered from my parents. How does that compare to other Asian Americans who also were beaten by their parents, who were put under immense pressure to succeed in life, and whose parents might be like anti-mental health or anti, support, really, just like not being supportive, like very much a lot of gaslighting, a lot of narcissistic personality disorders amongst Asian Americans of that generation because of what they went through. It's so hard to figure out where do I fit in relative to everything else. Also, just having that conversation with my parents where back then when I was younger, I had no power. So I could never complain about anything. I'll just get like smacked if I said anything. If I talk about it now, I'm like, I said to my parents a few years ago, I'm like, that was abusive. What you did there was not right. That, caused me quite a bit of trauma and hurt. And it's taken a lot of years to like figure out how to get past that. And the response was, you think that was abusive? were you ever hungry?
So they're still doing it though.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's
For
yeah.
sure.
Oh, man.
But at the same time, it's like, I recognize they have very little empathy, but I also question like how much empathy can you have growing up in that kind of environment without wanting to, I don't know, like just end your life pretty much.
I can't even imagine that. That is just, I mean, it's interesting because like when I talk about making sure my kids understand that they are better off somebody else, it isn't, I guess it's in a different way. It's in a different way, you know, like my kids would be like, I'm bored. Oh, I'm so sick of, I got my kid this little emulator. We were talking about this, the Miu Mini, right? And for those who don't know, it's a little emulator. It looks like a Game Boy. You could put like literally thousands of retro, you know, arcade games, NES games, Super NES, all those things. Like I downloaded 1,000 games. 1,000 games. It was like 60 something gigs of games. And I put it on his thing. And he's like, I'm bored. I don't have any games to play. And I'm like, dude, you have 1,000 games.
You fucked up, Jeremy.
On that thing. You can't tell me
that's where you fucked up.
I gave him too many games. I get paralysis of choice, man. That's the problem. He's got too many options. See, that's what my UX designer had. I should have put it on and said, if I give him 1,000 games, he's not going to find one. If I give him 20, he's going to play, you know. But, you know, he says stuff like that. It's just like, you know, there's kids that like don't have anything and blah, blah, blah. I'm like trying to like make sure that he knows like, you know, he's probably better off. I don't know. Hopefully it's not the same way that like your parents use their childhood as sort of a, I don't want to say weapon, because I don't think they were intending to make it like a weapon. It was probably just like, I need to raise my kid to appreciate what they have. I'm sure like if you're trying to put empathy there, you know, they thought they were doing the right thing, you know, I don't know, assume positive intent. Sometimes it's, you know, you can't, but have you ever thought about that? I'm curious, like what your thought is there. Is that something you tried to rationalize that?
Honestly, I think they were just so busy with work back then because, you know, we had just moved to the US. We were poor as fuck. And they were more worried about making rent, putting food on the table. Right. So if I'm complaining about being bored or like I'm having a hard time with something, they're just like, I can't deal with this bullshit right now because you have it good, you know? Like we're busting our ass like 12, 14 hours per day working. All you have to do is just like get some schoolwork done.
Do you know what I was doing when I was your age? That kind of stuff.
It's understandable, but it actually causes quite a bit of trauma for kids, I think, because, you know, it's like having your feelings invalidated constantly forever.
And what does that do for you when you're an adult? Yeah. Now let me ask you this. Are you it sounds like you still talk to your parents. You have a relationship.
I made it very clear to them to only call me when there's an emergency. We've had to slowly calibrate what the definition of emergency is over the years. But it's this thing where Chinese listeners or Asian listeners, East Asian listeners would immediately get what the fuck I'm talking about. If they called me and they asked a question that's like kind of important, like, oh, you know, we lost our social security card. Can you help us like, you know, get it reprinted? I'm like, okay, that's important thing. I can help you with that. And the next thing they do is they make small talk with me. And it's like, have you eaten? Are you sleeping well? Wow, and it's like a form of caring among Asian parents because they have no other tools to like show that they care and they love you. And I'm just like, no. We're not there. We're not friends, okay? Like this is not happening. I'm here to help you take care of something. That's where I'm constantly calibrating with them. Like, here's what I can do for you. And very much service oriented. And this other relationship thing that typically happens between a parent and a child in Asian cultures, that's not going to happen until either we have a discussion, you know, we have a conversation around my trauma and what you've done, and you kind of like listen to me because they actually just refuse to listen, or they respond with something crazy, or I go through the process of therapy and I get to a point where it doesn't bother me anymore the same way it bothers me today. And that's been a multi-year process. And I think that's really the only hope I have normalizing this relationship I have with my parents. But, you know, I'm like 4 years into therapy at this point, and we're closer. We're definitely closer. I'm like worlds better than where I was before. I'm not at a point where I feel like I can have that normal conversation with my parents and not feel triggered and not feel like angry and upset afterwards. And I don't like that feeling after having that talk with them, because like I'm just bummed out for a bit.
So I've actually never been to therapy. I had like a couple like therapy sessions, but they weren't like regular sessions or anything. I don't have like a regular standing appointment. My way of like coping with all of it was just to not talk to them anymore. So I actually had a thing happen with my dad. God, I don't even remember. This was like 6 years. Yeah, it was over 6 years ago because my dad's never met Arlo and he's 6. I just like cut him off. My parents are divorced, so they don't live together. Just like cut him. I'm like, I'm done. We're never talking again. I like blocked him on my phone. I blocked him on email. So like if he sends email, it just like it gets blocked or whatever. And that was like my way of dealing with it. At the time, my dad actually had never gone to therapy. And then after that happened, I think he realized like, oh shit. And he got like diagnosed with bipolar disorder and end up on meds. And like my sister, like she has a relationship with him and like they go to therapy together and stuff. But I'm just like, I don't know, dude. I'm like at the point where I'm like, I just have too much shit to worry about. Like, I don't need your relationship, like I have my own family to take care of. I have my own friends. Like, I don't need that, like I heard someone recently say something. I thought this was interesting. It was like, you've got family and you got relatives. You don't necessarily need to treat all your relatives like family, and you can treat your friends like family. Your family you could choose, really. And so I don't know. I get a lot of guilt though from my mom because she's Italian and, like Italians are very much like, oh, family first, blood before everything else. And I just don't care. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe this is like something I need to go to a therapist and talk through. But I just like, dude, I'm done. Like, especially, I think what like triggered a lot of that was like the first Trump election. Cause I was like on Facebook and like all their shit, they're all very much like pro-Trump. For those who aren't aware, I'm from like South Louisiana. Pretty much everybody down there, unless you live in like Orleans Parish. And even then there's a lot of Trumpsters in Orleans Parish, but they don't live in Orleans Parish. Too many blacks. So they had to move to the suburbs. So anyway, this is again, one of the reasons I'm just like, fuck you guys. I don't even see the point. I just don't agree with any of their politics. I don't agree with their perspectives on, black people, gay people, Latinos, immigrants. Like, I don't see any point in rectifying that relationship. I just would rather be done with it and just be like, I don't need to see you on Thanksgiving. I don't care. I'd rather have Friendsgiving and share a meal with people I actually like. Here's a good example. Last time we went home for Thanksgiving, this was like 5 years ago. We went to my mom's house and I have a cousin who's gay and he's sitting right next to my uncle, very much pro-Trump. My uncle starts making fun of gay people right next to my cousin who is gay. And I'm like, what the fuck are we doing here? Why are my kids watching this thinking, like, I don't want them seeing this behavior and being like, this is okay just because it's my mom's brother? Like, I don't give a shit. I really don't care. I'm like, I'm done. I'll see you guys later. We'll send you a card and I'll text you on your birthday. Like, you know what I mean? So I don't know. I just don't even, I guess like one of the things I've kind of maybe rationalized my non-therapy is just like, I got this. I'm going to cut them off. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just like, probably just like sweeping it under a rug and not really fixing anything. I think I'm just covering it up. But
hey, man, I'm spending a lot of time and money in therapy to get to where you are. Yeah, because I don't feel like deep down, I don't feel great about this, right? Like there's guilt involved. And like, how do you, coming from Chinese culture where you put your ancestors or your parents and so on a pedestal. And that's like their whole shtick, which is, we know better than you. We've been around the block and you really should listen to us. We have the experience. But it's tough. Like, I can't imagine what your dad went through going to Vietnam at 17 years old. Like that's fucking crazy.
Dude.
That is.
I've never met my grandpa, my dad's dad. He died when my dad was younger. I heard rumors that he committed suicide, but no one ever really talked about it. My dad never talked to his family. We were never close with my dad's side of the family, mostly because he was just a giant asshole, would fight with them all the time and like wouldn't talk to them. So he would get in these moods where he just wouldn't talk. So like, I never really met that side of the family. I mean, I met like a few, my uncles, and obviously I knew my cousins and stuff, but like never got to know them. We never went there for Christmas. We never went there for Thanksgiving. It was just sort of like random, I don't know, weddings or something. I'd see him at a wedding or a funeral. That's pretty much the only time I ever saw anybody on my dad's side of the family. There was clearly a lot of trauma there growing up, and I mean, something made him want to leave home at 17 to go fight a war across the world, and I think it takes a certain kind of person to want to go fight a war and just like gung-ho about, I don't know, fighting commies or whatever it was that he was, excited about. It's just sort of like telling that, I mean, there's something there. right? Like you don't just do that because you have like a happy life. You're like, Mom, Dad, I love you so much, but I got to go fight some commies. I'll see you. Hopefully I'll be back in a couple of years. There's something there, but like the generational trauma thing you were talking about, it's like really fascinating because I'm reading this book right now and I haven't finished it yet. But it didn't start with you. And it's talking like the first half of the book was talking about how trauma is actually like ingrained in our DNA, And so when your parents go through trauma, and especially women, because they've got their eggs when they were born. So those eggs are infused with that, and the trauma will actually change your DNA. It's really fascinating. So it's not just like you're born and there's a bit of, it's all nature and how you're born is, your kids are going to pass whatever. That can change. So if you have trauma, that trauma can be passed to your kids. And they experimented with mice and, had a set of mice that went through trauma. Those kids were more jumpy. They were more responsive to stressors and things like that than the ones whose parents were not. That generational trauma is real, man. Like it's genetic. It's not just how you were brought up. It's fascinating. And that generational trauma definitely plays a huge part into this, When we talk about bringing this back to some of the work, like all this stuff going on, like it impacts, work, it impacts life, it impacts how you raise your kids, it impacts what jobs you have and how happy you are and how productive you are. I don't know. It's just like fascinating, man. Like all that stuff, how it's all connected. I'm not a scientist, obviously, and I read a book about it, a few chapters in a book. But I don't know, dude. It's just fascinating to think about. It's just like a lot of this is not anything you did, I think, is like the thing that I took away from that. Shit that happened to everybody impacts you, which is not even, I don't know. It's crazy.
I think even just beyond the genetics component, it's also just how trauma changes people, right? Like I can't imagine how my parents could potentially be good parents if they could never spend time with their parents for a number of reasons. And like my dad wasn't really raised by his parents. And, you can tell like he's an asshole. He's so just like an angry, violent person. It's like he's like he gets comically angry and violent. What you just told me, the one thing that I just keep imagining in my head right now is some poor lab assistant is in charge of traumatizing the mice to make this experiment work.
Like shocking them or so whipping.
Yeah, it's like how do I traumatize the mouse in a way that can affect its offspring? And I need to like think up ways to do this. That's
I never even thought about that.
I don't know if this like poor lab assistant is like, maybe he's like sadistic or like just an asshole.
Just really into it, just like poking them extra little poke.
Yeah, I don't know. I bet it's like even worse than that. I don't want to think about this.
For some reason, these mice are more traumatized than the other. Yeah, that's funny, dude. I had never thought about that. But what actually makes me think about this interesting because your parents were saying like, and this is, I hear the same thing. My Italians, again, very much like, oh, family is important. Growing up with no parents and not having elders to learn from, you break the cycle of good parenting because there is certain benefits to listening to your elders, when they are good elders. You know what I mean? So like if they actually grew up and they experience things and they can save you from making those mistakes yourself, yes, listen to your elders. But when your elders grow up with no elders of their own to learn from and don't know how to give advice, don't know how to share, don't know how to protect or encourage or help you to grow, like then that becomes, a problem and traumatic for the next generation. But it's interesting because like if you can just break that cycle somehow, and that's the really interesting thing about this book is like it didn't start with you, but it can end with you, and you can and that's the thing I think that therapy would help with. And I've never been to therapy, but understanding the trauma, understanding mental health and how it impacts you and your development over time, especially as a developing brain in a young kid, you can actually break that cycle and help your children to not grow up traumatized adults going through, complex PTSD and things like that, which is really fascinating. And it's sort of like a silver lining to all of this, like maybe a happy ending, if you will, like you can break that cycle. I don't know, man, but it's interesting because like that trauma though is not always like your parents. It could be like anything. It could be getting bullied in school. It could be like all these things. So it's like hard to break the cycle. Like your parents' influence on your mental health, I guess, I don't know what word you'd use, is just one part of the many things that impact you later in life. So
I love that. I love that it can end with you. And one thing I'm a big proponent of is many of my friends who have shitty or had shitty parents are just like, I'm not gonna have any kids. Like, I give up. I'm not gonna be a good parent. This is not gonna work. Wow. I respect that. And I kind of wish that my parents had that kind of attitude, because they were so sure that they were going to be capable parents, because they read a few books, apparently. My mom's like, I read all the books when I was raising you, and I like tried really hard. And I'm like, whoa. But, the other thing that I think you brought up is really interesting. It's like listening to your elders makes sense in many ways, but things change. And I think my parents are like very much stuck in the past, and they're stuck in this time when the Chinese government was just so oppressive and like made you do things like, plucked you out of your family, sent you to a factory or commune to work for the next several years as like a not even teenager yet. How do you get out of something like that? It's so traumatic. I don't think they ever left that mindset. So they're all like, you have to focus on your grades. You have to like make sure you don't get fucked over. And everything's like this preparation for something big. And it's not like that anymore. And they're always like telling me, you have to do this and this. I'm just like, you don't know anything about what the US is like. And your perspective is deeply, I don't want to say flawed, but it's like, it's very different. If I were still in China and like the Chinese government hadn't changed, and I'm like, yeah, everything you say makes perfect sense, and I should listen to you. But I think part of the issue with trauma is that people don't ever escape from that environment, or they still have the scars and legacy information that tells them how to react to something in a very instinctive way that doesn't actually serve them anymore. It's like, it's a vestigial function that no longer helps. I'm sure we can tie this into work, actually, because it's kind of the same issues.
It is all related, dude. Yeah. I mean, well, how would you tie it to work? Like, or maybe not, how would you tie it to work? I guess the question is, how do you use that same mindset to adjust to work or adjust to difficult situations?
I haven't. That's the problem. And I recognize some of the things that make me a good designer came from how my parents brought me up. That's because my parents were always very focused on the problem. And they never rewarded good performance for anything. Not that I was performing well, because I have really bad ADHD starting from like third grade. And I was like one of those flunky Asians who just did not do well in school. When I say I did not do well, like I have some friends who are like, oh, I didn't do well. I'm like, what do you get? Like 96? Like, yeah, I didn't get 100. I got 96. And I'm like, you motherfucker. Like, when I say I did poorly, like I would flunk 2 or 3 classes per semester, like at school, and I have to go to summer classes to make them up. My high school average was 72, and I flunked out of college. I couldn't. They just kicked me out for low performance. I didn't even graduate from high school, actually, and because I flunked the senior, like second semester senior course, the senior year course was Spanish. For the first semester of college, I was like afraid that they would like come into my class and pull me out. It's like, we just received word. We just realized that you never completed your
in the middle of the
high school credits. And for some reason, they just like kind of gloss over it because they already accepted me by then. It's just like never. Anyway, my parents always focus on the things that you can tweak and get better at. I would score 100 back in first grade. I remember it was a class of like 50-something kids, and only 3 people out of 50 kids scored 100% on like one test. And I had scored 100% on both midterms for both math and Chinese, which is like the only 2 topics when you're in first grade in China. This is back when we used to go to school 6 days a week, by the way. Like, we didn't have 5 days a week. So it was like 7 to 4, I think. Lord. 7 in the morning to 4 p.m. It was pretty intense. The teacher complained that I was the last one to finish my test. And my mom put a clock in front of me when I did my homework for the next like several months, because they were like
that's going to help you go faster, right?
Yeah, because they're like, you're not really looking at the time. And I'm just like, I got 100 though. Like I got the top score. It was a perfect score. And she was just like, you need to like hurry it up. You're kind of slow was the feedback. That is very useful when you're a designer and you're looking at like what's not working. You can like pinpoint issues everywhere, but that doesn't work well in a team environment, because nobody wants you to like pinpoint every little fucked up thing that happens. Work is so emotional. And we don't actually talk about that enough because there are multiple sides of design. There's like the craft side of things, and it's like technical skills. And then there's the emotional side, like design maturity. And I would say design maturity is like the vast majority of it is like emotional labor. You are trying to understand the culture of the company and trying to get people to do things differently. And people don't do things in a suboptimal way because they do that on purpose. They do it because there is some kind of cultural or maybe some aspect that they believe, and it may not be fully true. Just like how you and I have a bunch of, misconceptions about things that we hold onto dearly for any number of reasons. And so much of design maturity is trying to get people to see some inconsistencies or logic that doesn't really work out. And that's tough.
Yeah, dude. So it's interesting because like it depends on the team, and I've been in a bunch of different teams. I've worked at the same place for a long time, but many teams within that organization. And it's funny because like I almost treat work very similar to how I treat my family. Like I find it easy to detach from my work. And I think getting laid off multiple times has like kind of helped me realize that my job is a source of income. That doesn't mean I have to like invest in my 100% emotional well-being into doing a great job. Like I'll give you an example. I was on a team some time ago, this is years and years ago. Pretty much everybody on the team was like a total slapdick. They sucked. They were awful. It was like one of the worst teams I've ever been on. Luckily, I wasn't on this team for very long. What I realized was, why am I giving 100% or even 110% or whatever when everyone else is giving the bare minimum? Like nobody else gave a shit. Nobody else cared. I could show up every day and invest. I was trying to get these people to change, but they're not. Why? Why would I do that? So like, I just was like, you know what? What do you need me to do? You need to make that thing, you may push that pixel to the left? Great. I don't care. Because at the end of the day, I'm getting paid. Every 2 weeks, I still get my paycheck. What's interesting is like right now, I think you could tell people like, oh, if you don't like your team, quit. But obviously right now is like the worst time to quit a job and try to find another job. Unless you have a job lined up, do not quit. Unless you have some source of income to replace it. It doesn't have to be UX. It doesn't have to be design. It doesn't have to be software. But unless you have some source of income, like don't quit. You can't really say like I did with my parents, like, oh, I'm never talking to you again. I'm quit. I'm out. But I think you can detach yourself and not, and this is easier said than done. I don't want to like give this as like blanket advice to everybody. This is how I have approached it. Just show up, do what you need to do, and go home. I'm not going to change this organization. I'm not going to make this team better. I'm not going to deliver great work. I'm not even going to be excited about showing up, but I'm getting a paycheck. And that's like, for me, the most important part. So I think, I don't know, like it's hard to do. And if you can find a team where you are giving your all and you're excited and you love the team and the work and it's rewarding, but not every job is going to be that. That's how I kind of picture it. So like, I don't know, it's just sort of like you could use that money to finance your job search and be looking for a better opportunity. And then when it comes, it comes. But I don't know. I mean, I know it's easier said than done, and it's hard to give blanket advice like that. And I wouldn't tell everybody to do that because some people can't. I don't know. Maybe this is like some weird thing with me. I don't know. This is like a personality disorder because I'm neurodivergent perhaps, but I could just flip that switch very easily and just be like, whatever. I don't care. I'm done. My wife thinks that's weird. So I don't know if other people think that's weird, but I don't know.
I don't think it's weird. I'm very envious because I can't do that. And for me to flip that switch, it's like something catastrophic has happened. It's like the sign on the wall. It's like, don't ever flip this switch. Do not flip this switch. Yeah. You ever see those signs?
Don't break this box. Yeah.
And for me, it's like, I have to go 100. I have to really, really care about everything because there's that perfectionist streak in me, and it's not healthy anyway. But I feel like in my life, I've tried to harness it so that it's beneficial to me in some way. But there are massive drawbacks with that. So for me to not care about something, like something bad would have to happen for me to say, well, fuck this. I'm going to give like 20% instead of 110%. I don't think that's really healthy, to be honest. And that's something that I want to get away from. So I would say what you're talking about makes a whole lot of sense because work isn't supposed to be like that. Like I struggle every day with trying to figure out, should I be changing or should I be accepting, like this is just who I am? And I need to leverage that and then kind of like protect it, like make sure I only go into environments that are a certain way versus flipping that switch. So it's like, well, don't go into this environment if you have to flip that switch because you don't want to flip the switch. So just don't even try to work in that kind of environment. Yeah, it's a constant struggle.
I've read an interview recently with some British actor. I can't remember his name, but he had this really interesting thing that he said where when he started out, and I feel like a lot of junior designers are like this. When he started out acting, his goal was be the best actor or the top 10% of actors of all time or whatever it was. I can't remember exactly, but it was some like crazy thing. And he's like, over time, I realized that was such a ridiculous goal to have.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to win Academy Awards and Oscars and Emmys and all this crap to be a successful actor. I could get relatively low paying jobs, still be successful, still pay my bills and all those things. And I think a lot of designers, they're like, oh, I want to be the most famous LinkedIn influencer. I want to be the most famous TikTok designer. Or I want to be the founder of this and the founder of that. I don't know. I used to play music, right? And we had, my band with grandiose ideas of getting record deals and all that crap. The fraction of people who become well-known, successful, writing books or getting record deals or, millions of downloads on YouTube, I don't even know the number. It's got to be like a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of 1%. Yeah. Like those people are the minority, and you can't expect, and if you compare your career with their career, you're just never going to be, happy is the wrong word, comfortable, not complacent. What's the right word for that? Like, you're never going to feel satisfied with your life. And I don't know. I think like at the end of the day, like for me, that's sort of my goal is just be satisfied. Like if I can make enough money to go get pizza every Friday night with my kids and have a couple beers, and I don't have to worry about the bank taking my car away or the bank taking my house away, and I can make enough money to go on 1 or 2 vacations a year, that's all I want. That's all I need, And so if I do that with like a UX designer or a carpenter job or waiting tables or bartending or podcasts or whatever, I'm satisfied, I don't know. Like, but there's always that party that wants to do better, wants to be more, wants to get more downloads, wants to get a higher promotion, bigger salary, bigger title. And I don't know, like that's a struggle because it's not easy to do.
Yeah.
But I think that's like the key is just like figure out how to be satisfied with where you are. And I don't know, just live your life.
Do you feel like capitalism allows us that kind of safety?
I mean, no, not at all. I mean, I've been laid off twice, and like the thing I was terrified of anything was like having to move, having to like, I live in an awesome neighborhood, like selling my house. Like, I don't know, like I don't want to move to the suburbs. I live in like an urban neighborhood, like, I can walk downtown, I can, all this stuff. Like, I don't want to move to the suburb, like, so no, I mean, I don't think so at all. Luckily, my wife is in software, so she makes a lot of money. She was able to support us when I got laid off, and she's the trophy, I'm the trophy husband. I'm the stay-at-home dad. See.
Yeah. Check out that body.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, right. I'm just showing my beer belly. I don't know, dude. I don't think it does, man. And that's like where I think, and this is where I think like it's important to try to detach yourself, because software is just, it changes. Like it's constantly changing. And it's funny because like when I think about, 20 years ago, my parents are like, oh, you got to get into computers. Everybody, got to get into computers. Computers is the next big thing. And now I just think about like I had a buddy in high school. We used to make fun of him because he became a plumber. He went to college and stuff, but like he became a plumber. Everybody else was like engineer this, petroleum engineer, electrical engineer, doctor, lawyers, whatever. And he became a plumber. But that dude now, he joined a union. He's got a steady job. He could get a job anywhere in the world, as long as he understands the code requirements. I couldn't say the same thing for anybody in UX design. You have no idea a year from now what's going to happen with AI, what's going to happen with the market. Anybody who tries to make a prediction is just completely, talking out of their ass, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know, dude. Like I couldn't say the same for anyone in software. What is AI going to do for designers, code, research, all this stuff? I have no clue. I don't know. It's like a freaking scary time. I don't know. That's again where I just like, if you can detach yourself from that title, you just figure out how to make money to like support yourself in that lifestyle that you want to live. Like who cares how you make it, as long as it's legal, obviously, but
it's tied together though. Your title, where you work, has a lot to do with how much money you're making.
Well, but you could make similar salaries with completely different titles in completely different industries. Like, yes, a software engineer in Silicon Valley is going to make a lot of money, but a plumber that joined a union is going to make 6 figures in a big city somewhere, probably, or a contractor who runs their own business, general contractor is going to make a bunch of money.
People want more. Like there's no safety net. So it's like it's kind of like this fear of something catastrophic happening, and you need to prepare for it by accruing massive amounts of wealth and resources. And that's kind of how the ultra wealthy think about things.
Yeah.
And I think capitalism like kind of pushes us to do the same in a way. Like for me, I don't like posting on LinkedIn anymore. Like I don't want to write stuff anymore about design. I don't want to talk about design as much. And this is kind of like why I want to chit chat with you over a podcast about like mental health and like random shit rather than talk about design, because it's so, I don't want to say depressing,
dude,
but there are parts of it right now where I'm just like, this is not right. I think when times were better, when the market was better, it was more aspirational about what do you want to do? How do you want to grow your skills? And nowadays it's like fear. It's like, here's how the industry is changing. And if you don't do X, you will get fucked over in Y number of months. And one thing that actually bothers me quite a bit is you have a lot of design content creators. Each one has their own idea of what's considered to be a really good designer, like one that's worthy of praise and big salaries, and how other people should look up to them and like learn from them. Every single one of them is basically is like the skill model, the matrix that I have is the best. And you should listen to me as a result. And I get it. I feel like there's just so many different kinds of designers. And there's a need for every type of designer because you have so many different kinds of products and services and whatnot. Sometimes you need a service designer. Sometimes you need more research. Sometimes you need like hands-on work to create really beautiful UIs. Nothing is inherently superior. It's as if developers were arguing over, I can code Java, so I'm a better coder than you because you use Ruby on Rails or something. And like you can argue about how, well, there's more demand for certain languages and frameworks than and that changes every few years, right? And same thing with design. It's like 5 years ago, the demand for designers is like very different than what you expect a hireable designer to be now. But it doesn't mean that this designer who gets more jobs, perhaps, or more opportunities is like superior. I get that that's a very alluring aspect. If I can learn this skill and then I get, $50,000 per year pay bump and I have like these job offers rolling in, that's very seductive. I get it. But there's just like this denigration. It's like, let's talk shit about these other designers who don't do this. And a lot of it isn't like super overt. Like they wouldn't say it outright, but it's like they might laugh at it. And like there's one podcast, this really popular design podcast, which I actually really like. It's about design engineer, which is definitely like the hottest jobs right now for designers, right? Because you can code, you can make stuff. We want makers right now. And every founder wants that for their founding designer. And every design recruiter you talk to right now is like, yeah, we're looking for designers who can ship, who can build things, who aren't just gonna be on a whiteboard, right? And that's like another thing that we denigrate them by saying, oh, they're just whiteboard people. They're just idea people, right? Because ideas aren't important and strategy isn't. In the conversation, I don't think they meant this on purpose, but the interviewer asked the design engineer or the builder, like, would you ever go back to being a UX designer? And they both kind of like chuckled and they're just like, no. It's kind of the same way that designers talked about Macromedia Flash designers like 10 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, you're a dinosaur. Like, what are you doing? Like, get out of there. Come to the light. And like, it's so alluring. I get it. And yeah, they're selling courses on how to do this, right? So you kind of have to like pimp that out and pump it up and say, this is what design is. And so much of it is like fear-based. It's like, if you don't do this, then you're going to be left behind and you're not going to be considered a good and valuable and hireable designer anymore. And that's so subjective. And like, I feel like every few years you have designers who come in and they're just like, I'm the paradigm of what's considered the epitome of good design. And that sucks because it's kind of moving back and forth at this point. It's a pendulum, right?
I'm with you on Lee. I am over it, dude. And the only reason I'm posting now is just promote the show. That is it. I have stopped like trying to be informative, and like everybody now is posting like, oh, here's the top posts from the week. Here's the weekly recap. And I just like fucking give a shit anymore. I honestly don't. Like I've reached like 17,000 followers it literally did nothing for me as far as downloads go. I could not post about an episode and it gets the exact same amount of downloads as it did the week before. It does nothing for me. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm done. I was like, I post on Tuesdays and Thursdays now, and I do the cognition catalog thing because I like committed myself to like finishing that. But yeah, I'm the same way, man. I just like, I used to comment all the time and engage, and I love all those people, and like there's a bunch of great people like I consider friends. But I'm just like, I don't know. I'm the same way. Like I look at it and I'm just like, this place makes me miserable. Social media in general makes me miserable. LinkedIn now makes me miserable. And I see like the video tab and they're promoting video and I'm like, I can't do video. I can't compete now. Like I'm a dinosaur essentially. But I don't know, dude. I'm with you. I just like, but that's like, again, like for me and I'm talking with Debbie Levitt about this next week or a couple weeks about, she wrote a book about life after tech. To me, this is sort of where just like, I think so many designers, we get stuck on that title of designer and we assume that that's the only way that we can make money. You might not make the $200,000 Silicon Valley salary, but if you can figure out how to decrease your lifestyle and you don't need the $200,000, find a job that makes you happy and make less, assuming you can afford to live, assuming you can support your family and all that stuff. The problem that I've run into is lifestyle creep. My wife and I both make six figures plus, like we were making, almost 400 grand a year combined salaries. We bought stuff. Two houses too fucking big. We bought a minivan. We probably should have bought a used one instead of a new one, like all this expensive fucking $3,000 couch, like all this bullshit when we could have easily gone to fucking IKEA, gotten like an $800 couch that would have felt exactly the same. It's like we had the money. Why not? But now you're stuck in this sort of lifestyle and then you have to make the Silicon Valley engineering salary to support yourself. But we did it to ourselves, which is the interesting thing. And then that adds more stress. You get laid off. You don't have the runway. You get more stressed out. Your mental health suffers, So it's like this cycle. So like, that's where I think going back to what you mentioned about capitalism, like, I don't know that capitalism is to blame as much as our expectations are to blame, like capitalism, say what you will about it, but I don't know that there's a better system, maybe socialism, obviously communism doesn't work. We've seen that. The expectations and what we're expecting to be able to do based on the salary we had, I think adds as much stress as anything else. I don't know. It's hard. I mean, it's so hard. It's so hard. That's kind of like I'm thinking a lot about that lifestyle creep and stuff too, and how that's like impacted my mental health.
Do you feel like LinkedIn is toxic, or is it a good place for people to be if you're a designer?
I think it depends, man. I think it's a wonderful place to meet people. I think it's a wonderful place to make friends. I mean, I can't even list on two hands the number of people that I would consider friends that I've met through engaging on LinkedIn. I'd never trade that for anything. But at the same time, I think a lot of junior designers go in there and they see people posting one thing, another person posting something seemingly completely contradictory, both saying like your point, oh, this is a good example of what a designer should be. It's confusing. And I think it all depends on why you're there. I think it depends on what you're trying to get out of it. And I think it depends on how you use it. If you're just doom scrolling constantly, I don't think it's helpful. If you're there engaging in comments and making friends and networking the right way, I think it's valuable. So I don't know. It's hard to say. I think it's one of those things like, is the platform to blame or the people that are using the platform the wrong way to blame? I don't know the answer, dude. Honestly, I'm not sure. What do you think? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I've got a spicy question for you.
What you got?
If you were not a content creator and you're a designer who is somewhat new to LinkedIn, right? Or social media, and you're just like, I'm going to go on LinkedIn because that's where jobs are.
Yeah.
Would you follow design content creators? Knowing what you know right now, would you recommend?
I don't know who you would follow. I mean, I don't know, honestly. That's a really good question. I probably would give the advice to go on LinkedIn to meet people because it's a good place to meet people from all over the world.
Yeah, I agree.
But I would say be very careful of the content that you're taking in, be very critical, think very critically about what you're ingesting and understand whether or not it applies to you. Because I think that's sort of the biggest problem.
Holy shit.
Right?
You sound like Darren Hood. This is the Darren Hood phrase.
Well, dude, he's right though. I mean, he talks about the baby bird syndrome and all the time and like just taking it all in.
Okay.
And I don't think he's wrong, dude. I mean, like there's so much shit utter shit on LinkedIn. But that doesn't mean everything on LinkedIn is shit. Like there are people that I think that are doing great things and posting the right stuff. So, I think it all depends on who you follow, man. I think the problem is that I found, and I've seen this because I've been posting on LinkedIn for almost 2 years now, it's cyclical. Like there are people who post all the time for months and months or a year and then just disappear and never post. And then you got a new crowd that posts a bunch of stuff and then they get sick of it and they burn out. I mean, you're an example. You post all the time and then you stop. TB David, another example. He used to post all the time and then he stopped. Like I used to post all the time and I stopped.
TB's gone?
Yeah, he's not posting on LinkedIn anymore. I don't know, unless he blocked me. I don't think he would do that, but but yeah. So, I don't know, dude. I think it all depends how you use it. And I think Darren Hood's totally right, dude. You got to think critically about what you're pulling in, and I think you got to understand whether or not that advice applies to you. Because a lot of times it's bullshit. People are just trying to sell stuff. They got a sponsored post and whatever. Like I don't do sponsored posts. Like people have asked me to do sponsored posts. I don't want to, I turn them down. I don't want to do it.
Wix.
I actually didn't pull the
read it now.
I didn't pull the script up. If you're looking to start a new website project, Wix is about a design studio. Yeah, I mean, it all depends, man. I think that's the thing. I think you got to think critically about it, and I think like what I've found from the content game is that there are a lot of people posting sponsored content that have actually never used those systems or tools before, but they write a great post and it looks great and it sounds great. And not to say those products are bad, but I don't think a lot of those people that are posting about the products are actually using the products on a daily basis. They're just like posting the shit, right? And a lot of people will put sponsored, hashtag ad, which I think is great, but a lot of people don't. And I don't know, dude. I honestly, I guess to answer your question, I don't know where else to go because I think local meetups are not the answer. Slack channels might be a great opportunity to do that if you can find them, but some of them, you got to pay and stuff. So it's not exactly the same. I don't know, man. What would you tell yourself? How would you answer that?
This is a very reductionist answer, and I need to really think this one through. But my initial reaction is like, I wouldn't follow anyone. I would say build relationships with people one-on-one because you like them, not because they are emanating all this content to you and you're like reading it. Because I don't think you actually learn a whole lot from reading LinkedIn posts.
No, dude, especially with like the lines and like skipping the lines and everything's in an order. There's some people on LinkedIn, I read the posts. I'm like, and I have ADHD too. I'm like, I can't read this. Like, I actually can't even finish it. I know you tried to make it all nice and organized, but yeah, I hate that shit.
I think there are a few people that really get me to think. I think John Culler is one of them. Like when I read his posts, I'm like, it's not trying to tell me to do something differently. It's not trying to sermonize or say this is better. He's just like pointing something out, and it gets me to think about things. And I like that. And that's kind of like where I draw the line. Where like, okay, this is cool. It's getting me to think. But a lot of the content is like, this is like the best way. This is how you do X. And I think there's a limit to how helpful that is. Because yes, you can learn something from it, but if you're to spend that time doing something else more concentrated, you might get a little bit further. I think LinkedIn, in some ways, like most social media, it's like they're delivering medicine with some sugar involved. And sometimes it feels like there's a lot more sugar than there is some kind of medicine. I don't know how useful that is in terms of you learning hard, tangible skills and also you feeling good about yourself afterwards, because so many of the posts that really blow up and do well in the algorithm, it's describing an issue, right? It's like really hammering home this problem that people are feeling or facing. That's just product marketing in some ways, right? Like it's just you're marketing something and nothing wrong with that. It's just like that's kind of how it is. But how much of it is like an advertisement that you're reading versus something that's like really helpful? So I'm kind of skeptical, but I'm also I feel very pessimistic right now. And that's more my own mood. And then that's liable to change. And I will probably have a different opinion about it later. I think there aren't that many other alternatives to LinkedIn right now. I think years ago, prior to the pandemic, there were a lot of options for you to go and meet people in person. Nowadays, a lot of it is online. And like I'm in New York City right now, and there really aren't that many senior level designer meetups or events.
Really? In New York?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you would think that there would be a lot, right?
Yeah,
there are quite a few design events, but I want to blame boot camps because that's a popular target. and how they tell all their students to network by going to meetups and asking people for jobs. And obviously, these boot camps do not train people in how to network. So you basically have a meetup event, and it would be like 80, 90% people who are out of school or out of boot camp. They're just asking you for advice and also if you have a job, which is fine. It's fine. We all did that. But if you're going there to like hang out, relax, maybe get away from design for a bit and just like meet other like-minded folks to like get to know a little bit better, you're just inundated with the same questions and requests, which is okay as well. But then you realize that those folks are just mingling with other folks like them. It's not really a good use of anyone's time. Like, do you have a job? Are you looking for a job? Yeah, we're all looking for jobs here, but nobody really has a job.
And nobody has a job to offer, so what's the point?
Yeah. It's like one of those events where you just have a bunch of straight guys together and they're just like, we did not get the ratio right for this event.
Let me ask you this then. What do you do? I mean, like, you know, I know it's hard to give blanket advice, but I'm just like, I don't know, if Junior Hong is trying to get a job right now or dealing, not even trying to get a job. Let's just say like, maybe let's rephrase this because I don't want this to be like, you know, this is not a normal interview. Just like thinking about like, because we started talking about all this too, because LinkedIn is impacting mental health. I was talking with some folks this past week about how just like LinkedIn, they burnt out on LinkedIn. They can't take LinkedIn anymore. And they're like, fuck it, I'm done. So LinkedIn is a good spot. You know, I mentioned this, it's like a good spot to go to meet people. But if you're feeling that, where would you go if you were just starting out and you're overwhelmed by LinkedIn and LinkedIn is kind of like messing you up? You know, your head's all messed up because of LinkedIn. What do you do? I don't even know. Honestly, I don't even know where I would go.
Yeah.
I don't know that I have an answer.
I would agree with you. I don't think that there is necessarily an alternative, but I think people kind of see it as either you go on LinkedIn or there's something better. Maybe there isn't anything better, and maybe your choice is to take a temporary break from LinkedIn as opposed to finding something better. I think of LinkedIn kind of like a dating app in some ways. And I know that's like a weird thing to say.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
But not in terms of like, this is something that you use to get laid or to like hook up or find romantic partners. That's not my point. Dating apps rely on people to constantly date and not settle down. Because once you settle down, then you're no longer an active user on the platform, right? Because like this is the thing, like, oh, are we deleting Tinder? Like, are we having that conversation? Are we official? Things like that. And like Hinge, that dating app, put up a really good ad, I think at one point saying, we want you to delete Hinge. That means you're successful. Like you got what you needed out of our app. And we want you to successfully transition out of using the app. And I'm like, I don't believe you for a second, but that's a really refreshing take on it.
Yeah, it makes you feel like they care about you personally.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I trust them, you know, and here's all my data.
Yeah, and I think LinkedIn is similar to that in that you only really go on LinkedIn if A, you're like some kind of psychopath who just like likes to talk about themselves and post content like us. Or you're there for a job. Or you're a normal person looking for a fucking job. And the second you find a job, I bet, like if I had internal LinkedIn user data, I would bet quite a bit of money that when somebody lands the job, their usage of LinkedIn just drops off precipitously. So if that's the case, then it doesn't really benefit LinkedIn to really help people land jobs quickly. It's kind of like, let's drag this thing out.
Hong, the conspiracy theorist, dude.
Yeah, let's really make people work for it. You know, let's really make them network the fuck out of it until then we give them a job after they're like on their last hurrah. They're just like on their knees, just like, please God, I need a job now. Otherwise I'm gonna be evicted. And then you give them a job.
All right, now here's the interesting thing, and this is where I go back and forth with LinkedIn because, and this is why, like I, you know, had a job, still used it, but when I think about networking and when I think about getting laid off, like I feel like right now, like a lot of the mental health issues and burnout are coming from the fact that people are losing jobs, they can't find jobs, and all this other stuff. When I think about LinkedIn, I feel like there's sort of a safety net that you are building by continuing to network with people after you landed a job. But then LinkedIn and posting on LinkedIn, seeing all the bullshit on LinkedIn burns you out. So then you want to stop using it, So it's just this weird cycle because like I think there's value in continuing it. But then going back to this, even though it's funny as I was telling my wife, like before I got laid off last time, the reason why I kept using LinkedIn was to I got to build my safety net, my network. So if I get laid off again, I'm going to have somebody, I won't be looking for a job as long. I got laid off in December, and the 17,000 followers, the posting every day, the podcast, none of it meant a fucking thing. None of it helped me find a job again. So I'm even like struggling in my head, kind of going back and forth. Is there value in it? Is the fact that like I couldn't get a job because LinkedIn isn't helpful, or is it because my portfolio sucked, or is it because I didn't have the right connections, or I didn't have the right skill set, or whatever. And so I don't know. I'm sort of like, I don't have an answer, but I'm like going back and forth in my head, like, it's valuable to build your social network. It's valuable to have that safety net. But then at the end of it, I got laid off in December. It never helped me. So I don't know, dude. I mean, again, I don't have an answer. I'm just kind of thinking out loud, but it's just weird. I don't know. I kind of go back and forth with like, should I recommend people do that or not? I don't know, honestly.
I think there's a big difference between building an audience and building a network.
Well, that's true.
These are different things, right? Like you were building an audience in many ways. You're targeting, or your content is in many ways targeting a set of designers who are looking for help in specific areas, whereas some other folks might be building a network more in terms of a certain set of expertise. I think that is going to impact certain things. Like John Cutler, like that guy who has like 100,000 followers in the product management space. Like I don't get half his stuff, okay? Like I'm not at the level where I read his stuff. I'm like, I get what he's talking about. Like, I get the semblance of it, but sometimes you write something, I'm like, I'm confused. Explain this to me, John. And he doesn't respond. But, but I think if John were looking for a job, he's going to get a job pretty quickly because he's building that kind of expertise. Like, he just so happens to also build a big following.
Are you saying that I'm not building expertise? Just kidding.
I
think you're right. I probably haven't, but
I'm not helping, am I? I'm not helping. This is like mental health week, and I'm just like, I'm just
you're supposed to like help me make me feel better. Now I feel like a dummy.
No, I think there's just different purposes for different things, right? Yeah. I also think the market is just really tough right now, and you're part of the subset of designers who aren't hyper focused on craft and visual design like me, and I think this is where this is lean times for us.
Yeah, dude, for sure. I mean, I've struggled with that too, and the fact that I'm like 40. What am I? 42. I don't even remember. 42. So I'm struggling with like that, and like I often ask myself, is it like ageism? Is it that whatever? I mean, I don't know. I hate to like blame isms on my own woes, but I often wonder like, does that have something to do with it? I don't know, man. I honestly don't know. That's sort of also too why I keep doing this other shit and why I keep going on LinkedIn to build the audience, is to have another source of revenue so that when I do find a job, if it's not paying what I was making before, and I'm not getting paid, and again, I mentioned like the lifestyle creep, like how do I keep my big ass fancy old house and the stupid minivan and all that crap? And if I'm not making the salary, then I have to have other ways to, thank you, Wix. I know I didn't give you a shout out today, but all that stuff has to, somehow keep finding revenue. I don't know. I could start LinkedIn sponsored posts, I guess.
Yeah, I just feel like LinkedIn doesn't really have guardrails. I don't think any social media app really has guardrails when it comes to your mental health. And it's always this like big open world, and they're constantly pressuring you to do things that are good for them. They reward you when you do those things, like creating content, engaging with other people. They're like, oh, here are more followers. Here are things that you might be looking for. And I don't think they really understand or really care when they do understand like how this impacts people's mental health. I honestly don't think LinkedIn is like the healthiest place to be when you're looking for a job. At the same time, it is probably the best place to look for a job or to network for a job, right? Yeah. And it's like, it's entirely up to you to figure out what is your relationship to this platform, and how do you navigate this while being cognizant of your mental health.
I just had this interesting thought in my head as you were mentioning this, like LinkedIn is the place to go. It's kind of funny, and I don't know if this is good or bad, But going remote, right, and being 100% remote, a lot of companies now are remote first. It's kind of made those local meetups irrelevant, right? Because I don't need to network with someone in my own city to find a job now. I can network with anyone all over the world and find a job. So those meetups have kind of dissipated, like you said. People aren't going, or they're not doing them as much anymore. Now, though, you've got this global audience. So then you start to compare yourself to everybody across the world, and you see all these people, and you get like this imposter syndrome or insufficiency. You feel insufficient or whatever because you're comparing yourself to all these other people. But like, because everything is remote, you can't go to the local meetups to find a job. You got to go to the global, where the global audience is, which happens to be a big social network like LinkedIn. And it's like this snowball effect that kind of gets you more depressed and more burnt out and more frustrated and everything else. And, I don't know. It's just, again, there's no alternative, I guess. But it's just sort of like ironic that sort of happened with the work from home market factors,
It's a lag, right? So when we all started going remote due to COVID, it was so sudden that we didn't really have any. We had Zoom and stuff, like Zoom exploded, right? Beyond those small groups of video conferencing tools, there really wasn't anything else. Like, we never really solved the happy hour thing, right? Like, my company at the time was like, let's do happy hour over Zoom. We all like grab a drink individually.
We tried that too.
And it was just so painful. It's like, this is like another meeting, but with alcohol involved. And it's almost depressing. It's like I'm drinking like in a room by myself.
Yeah, exactly. I totally.
So it's like a lag, right? And I think it's only like in the last several months when return to office became like a serious thing again. Like it's a serious threat now, right? With Amazon. I think people are, there are far fewer purely remote jobs at this point. It's all like hybrid pretty much. I think there's going to be a lag, and then we're going to see more and more in-person events. I don't think it's even like the remote issue. It's more of Meetup has been co-opted by like pure job seekers who are instructed by mentors and bootcamp instructors and just, more experienced people to like go network, go to meetups. And that's like the most common advice that everyone used to give out and still gives out. That's fine. That's great. But it's like at a ratio right now where it's not really sustainable, right? Like if everybody does the same thing, it doesn't really work anymore. And that's unfortunate.
I don't know. I know today, the whole point of today, I don't think was actionable takeaways or anything. It's just talking about this stuff and thinking about it because it's just, we don't talk about it enough. So.
Oh, yeah. We just talk about sucky shit that I have no answers for, that we don't have any answers for. It's just like, it sucks.
We're all doomed. Well, is that the point of Mental Health Awareness Week, I think, is just to make sure we're all aware, at the very least, aware of it.
I think people see it as we have a problem. We need to figure out a solution. And until the solution is figured out, we feel badly about it. I'm looking for a job. If I don't get a job, then everything is awful, which in many ways it is true. Like it's hard. I think it's only like now when people think more about mental health because they suddenly realize just like how bad things are. Like the question I often have for people is, the question I have for myself is, I've known that I was depressed since I was 11 or 12. I remember very vividly going to my mom with a Chinese dictionary in my hand because I didn't know how to say a therapist in Chinese. And I was like, Mom, I need this.
Wow, dude.
Like, I need help. Like, I need this. Like, I'm not okay right now. And my mom, in very traditional Asian fashion, said, why would you need this? This is for crazy people. Are you trying to tell me that you are insane? Like,
I'm not schizophrenic, Mom. I just need someone to talk to.
Obviously, I did not see a therapist for many, many years afterwards. Only in my mid-30s did I finally see a therapist. And that's like gap of, I did see a therapist like once or twice, but like for very short stints. But it wasn't until my mid-30s where I took it more seriously and actually went out of my way to look for good ones and to really engage with it and invest in it, right? And the question I had for myself is, why didn't I do this sooner, or why didn't I start doing it? Like, for example, you mentioned earlier that if you were thinking of it, what's kind of stopping you? Or like, what are the frictions?
To going to therapy?
Yeah.
It's fucking the pain in the ass to find one. Well,
yeah,
twofold. One, the money. Insurance doesn't always cover it. Insurance does cover, but not the people I'd want to use, or it's inconvenient, or it's remote when I'd rather be in person. Then the whole American insurance process of filling out paperwork and getting this and that and all this crap. That's the one thing that is the thing that has probably stopped me. Is just the amount of effort it takes to do it. Because I mean, there's a therapist around the block that a lot of people in my neighborhood have used and suggested. And I've actually called them and tried to set up an appointment, and we did like a free 15-minute thing. Mm-hmm. But it was basically like, well, how do I keep doing it? They're like, well, you got to fill this form out, do this, call your insurance company, blah, blah. I'm like, fuck, I can't. I'm just like, all right, whatever. And I found out that they weren't covered anyway, and I would have had to pay like $200, I think. What is it, every week or every other week, however often I would go. And I'm like, I can't, we pay for my kids to go to therapy for stuff, but it's like, I can't afford me plus them. So it's, classic parent thing, like let my kids do it, but I'll suffer, but I'm not suffering, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's the one thing that's keeping me. I mean,
yeah.
If it was as easy as walking in and talking to somebody, I would have been doing it for years. But America insurance company, you know how it works. Freedom, baby.
I was really broke at one point. I remember taking my dog to the vet and spending thousands. And I was like, this is money I don't have. Like, I would not go to the doctor.
Care credit. That's what care credit's for. Care credit. Make you feel bad.
Yeah.
Getting care credit.
That's like how it works here in the US. I feel like we make that choice. Like, oh, do we go to the doctor, or do we take care of ourselves, or do we take care of loved ones? And yeah, it's tough, man.
Well, it's fucked up, dude. I mean, it's like, one of those things you talk about, the airlines or whatever, put your mask on before you put your kid's mask on. And the insurance industry in the United States doesn't make that very easy.
Yeah.
To put your proverbial mask on.
There's one mask.
You put your kid's mask
There's only one mask.
Yeah, just one mask to go. Share the mask. I get the sessions this month. You get it next month. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. I would move to Canada in a heartbeat if my wife was up for it. If I knew how to do it. I don't know. I have a hard enough time filling out paperwork for therapy. Imagine paperwork got to move to Canada. That's not going to happen.
The paperwork it's a real thing, and the way the insurance like explains everything is so fucking convoluted and confusing.
Oh, dude, it's ridiculous. Yeah, you and I were going through that like last time we talked.
Yeah,
and we both happen to have like United, but like our interface is different, and what you see is different than what I see because my plan has different things, and it's like you can't even explain to me what to do to go to where, and even then it's like I don't know, it's just so overwhelming. This is funny, dude. Last week I had to take my kid to the therapy session actually. And he does it through his pediatric office. They have a therapist at his office. And the woman was like, have you met your deductible yet? I'm like, I have no fucking idea. How am I supposed to check that? How do I know? It's not like I just open my bank account and look and see. I've got to go to like 5 different websites and then log in, all this crap to see, and all these numbers of this copay and that deductible, 80% of this and 20% of that. And I'm like, the fuck does any of this mean? It's all meaningless garbage to me, And I don't know, dude. I just like, I don't know. You tell me. It was funny because it ended up being like, well, I don't know. I just won't charge you today, but worst case scenario, you'll get a bill in the mail. I'm like, great. Send me a fucking bill. Another fucking
great.
Bill. Yeah, thanks.
I mean, it wasn't. I think they knew, and you knew that wasn't going to stop you from your kid getting seen.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. I haven't met my deductible. I don't fucking know. That's so stupid, but I don't know. I wonder. Actually, it's funny because like we're talking about this as 2 Americans, and I wonder what this is like in Europe. Is it? I mean, do you know? Is it easier? I mean, do you just like call up somebody and they just bill the government, and that's how that works, or like? Is it just that much? Is that why the Nordic countries are so much happier?
I want to guess socialism.
Yeah,
and maybe like there are just things that help. But I was asking somebody when I was in Berlin. I was asking some folks, some designers there, like, oh, about mental health. Like, do you see a therapist? And apparently, it's hard there finding a therapist as well. Like, it's hard everywhere right now to find a good therapist. I wonder, maybe there's like a supply issue. Like, I don't think we realize how badly we needed therapy. A lot of people, like for me, I did not realize how badly I needed it. For my parents, like when we were still talking, I think one of the stipulations, because for them, they were like, why are you angry at us? Why are you punishing us for things that happened decades ago? I'm like, well, you're still the same. Like, you're still angry. You're still violent. You're still like super narcissistic or racist, and et cetera. I don't have that kind of relationship with you that you're looking for. To me, you're more like a stranger on the street, somebody who I empathize with, but I'm not like, oh, I need to hang out with you day and night, For them, they're just like, you're our son. We raised you and we like sacrificed so much for you. And I'm like, yeah, I recognize that. And I'm here for that. I'm here to help you if you needed help with anything in an emergency, but I'm not here to like chit chat with you. And if you really want to like understand this, like you want to go to a therapist, like we can do it together. We can go to counseling because you're not really listening to me. Like when I say stuff, you either interrupt me or you scream at me and we never get anywhere. And yeah, my dad was just like, I'm very normal. I don't need to see a therapist. Like I'm very, very normal. There's nothing wrong with me. And the insinuations like there's something very wrong with you because you're seeing a therapist. Yeah. It's like people don't realize is how I think my parents would very much benefit from some kind of mental health.
It's funny you mentioned that, like the way you feel about, because I feel like same way about my parents too. It's like I would help you if you were on the side of the road and you needed a tire change, and like, but that kind of stuff. But like, I don't want to go to dinner with you anymore, and I don't want to tell you about my day, and I have no interest in like having my kids call you on your birthday just because I'm supposed to, and like they don't know you, they barely know you because you don't make an effort, and so that kind of, it's interesting. I feel like very similar, and I'm wondering like too, like my dad, you mentioned, you felt like your dad was like narcissist. Mine is like, I feel like very similar, bipolar, narcissist, like everything else, like blames other people, everything, never takes responsibility for his own actions, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know how he ended up going to therapy and even got diagnosed with bipolar, because I feel it had to have been, and this is after I stopped talking to him, but my stepmom had to have like threatened him with like divorce or something if he didn't do it, and put the ultimatum. I don't know what happened. I have no idea what happened, but something happened. And I was shocked when I found out that he was going to therapy. But even then, I'm just like, we're done. I just have no time for you. I'm like other shit. I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if like, am I going to regret this after he dies? Because he's in his 70s. He was born in 43.
Yeah.
I'm not good at math. What is that? He's old.
That's so that's more than 70, dude.
He's old. I don't even know.
That's 80. That's like 81.
Is it? Oh yeah.
Yeah, 70. Well, anyway. Sorry, 43, right? 43 is 24 43. Now.
Yeah.
So
what is it?
That's like 61 plus 20. So that's 81.
20 minus 19. I got to use a calculator. 81. Yeah. So anyway, he doesn't have that much more time. And I don't know. I go back and forth. Like, I'm not worried about for me. I just wonder, like, are my kids going to resent me because I didn't let them have a relationship with their grandpa? You know what I mean? I don't know. I have no idea.
Maybe.
I don't know. I always wonder, I'm like, am I going to regret it? I don't know. Honestly, I'm not sure if I'm going to regret it, but YOLO.
Man, like, I feel the same way. Like, that's one thing that I definitely struggle with, so my dad's not a narcissist. My dad is, actually, I don't know if he might, I don't know for sure.
Oh,
I know my mom is.
Oh, your mom.
I'm pretty sure she's a narcissist. But my dad is just like angry and violent about everything. Like, triggers. My dad. He just he's like comically angry. He like turns red, bulging vein, like gets physical. Like I used to get like sucker slapped where,
oh my God, yeah. Jeez.
Yeah. So like I imagine American parents, like when they discipline their kids, they're like dentists. They're like, now I'm going to do this. You might feel some scraping sounds, or like you might feel a pinch here. Yeah. And like on TV, like American parents, like I did not watch my friends get disciplined by their parents, but on TV, it's like, we're going to spank you now. And like, young man, we're going to spank you for your, because you did this, because you passed your, curfew like 3 times in a row, or we caught you with marijuana with Mary Jane, and now we need to like commit to a spanking, right? So it's like they
you've been sentenced to one spanking. Yeah.
So they ramp it up, right? They let you know. And my dad would just like turn red. He's silent. And I don't know if he's gonna hit me or not in the next like 5 seconds or 20 seconds.
That's like traumatic, even just that.
Yeah, because you don't ever see it coming. It's not like he's gonna raise their hand. He's like very quick with it, right? I don't know where I'm going with this, but like that's. Oh wait, so I remember now. He's violent in that way where you don't really know when it's coming or where it's coming from. It's just like he just snaps. He could definitely use a lot of therapy, but he's never going to commit to that.
I don't know. Yeah, I often wonder if I made the wrong decision. I don't know. My wife was never tried to make me, which is kind of nice. She's not like, you need to go see your dad. You need to go do this. But when I go home, dude, last time we were in New Orleans, and this is one of the reasons why I'm like, fuck you guys. I never want to come here again. We went over there and we stayed with Amy's parents, who live about 45 minutes from my mom. So we drive over to my mom's house, and we had somewhere to go later that afternoon. So we kind of gave ourselves like a deadline. Like we only have a couple hours. So we go over there, And my mom and my sister live like 5 minutes away from each other. So we go there at my mom's house. Kids are playing. My mom pulled out some toys she has or something. And my sister shows up. My mom probably texted her, "Hey, Jeremy's here. Hurry up. You want to come see the kids? You got 5 minutes. They're going to leave soon." Then my dad calls. And my mom's like, "Oh, we're just hanging out with Jeremy and the kids." And I haven't seen, this was just last November.
Yeah.
So this was less than a year ago. I hadn't seen my dad in 6 years. And I'm like, if he fucking shows up here because you just told him we are here, I am fucking leaving and I am never coming back. Do you understand that? You know, like I told my mom that. I'm like, I do not need you to try to force me to have a relationship with him. If I want to, I am a grown-ass man and I will do it. I do not need you to do this for me. Anyway, that was basically that. And he never showed up, probably because my mom was like texting him, "Hey, Jeremy, please don't come. Sorry."
Sorry.
But my dad would do this weird shit where he would just like pop over at our house all the time. One of the reasons I'm like so happy we moved away was like, he can't now just pop over. He would just come over, leave a note on my mailbox. "Hey, just thinking about you," you know? And I'm like, fucking nerve. Like just, you know, I don't know.
No, this is interesting because like there's a language, right? Like it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, that if you were to go about it the right way, then there is a possibility that you could revitalize or rehabilitate this relationship, right? Like if you were to say, "Jeremy, like here's where I really fucked up on, and like I'm very sorry, and here's how I've changed, and here's the work I put into it. I know this is not, you're not gonna be ready to like pat each other on the back right away and call me dad like immediately, but like it's with the hope that we can get there someday."
Yeah, maybe. But even then it's like, I guess I question like the point. Like I'm never going to be like, "Hey, let's go on family vacations together. Hey, let's go out to dinner. Let's spend the weekend together. Let's go to a thing." You know, like even if we went to therapy and we're talking, like it would never be like it would be had this never happened, you know?
Yeah.
Like we used to go on vacations and stuff. And like before we stopped talking, like, he would rent a condo in Florida for the week. And, you know, my step family would go for a few days. We go for a few days. And like, but I would never do that now. Like that's never going to happen again. Even if we did go to therapy together.
Wow.
Like our relationship is so irreparably ruined from like what happened when we stopped talking. I'm just done. I don't know. Sometimes I feel bad about it, but then sometimes I feel like sometimes well, like my wife doesn't understand this, and it's similar to like we talked before about like I just separate myself from work. I just like cut them off. I'm like, "We're done. Never gonna talk to you again." Boop, delete your number, block your number, or whatever. I was able to do that like that so easily. My wife's like, "Is something wrong with you?" You know, she's like worried about me. Like I don't know that that's normal that like somebody could just do that. And I don't know, maybe there's something deeper there that probably a therapist would help with, but
maybe that's healthier, dude. Like, go ahead. Are you what?
Well, I was going to say, like, I wonder if there's like a deeper thing there that's like not okay. You know, maybe that symptom is okay, but like, is there a deeper thing there that's not okay that like lets me just flip off a relationship that fast and not have any remorse? I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know.
But maybe this is healthier because from my perspective as an Asian American who, it's like we're raised Catholic without all the benefits of like being Catholic, like the wafers, the delicious wafers I hear about.
Yeah, they taste very good. Yeah.
Yeah. And we just get all this guilt. And I used to feel terrible, and I still feel kind of terrible that I've cut my parents out of my life. So much of my therapy is centered around my parents and their experiences. That the last two therapists I've seen for long periods of time were Asian American. It's just a requirement for me because I cannot explain to a white person what the Cultural Revolution was like. They can read about it and they'd just be like, "What the fuck? This makes no sense." But you have to be Chinese, I think, to like kind of really understand the kind of traumatic impact it had on like entire generations of billions of people, right? For my parents, I deeply wanted them to just listen to me, to be like, to validate my feelings, to say, "Yes, this and this happened, and we made mistakes, and we shouldn't have done that. And we're going to listen to you and validate your feelings." And for me, that was like one of the most important things. And even to this day, they have not been able to do that. And I've tried everything. Like there are a few more things I can try that I'm just like, I'm like, nah, it's probably not going to work. Every time I tell them about something, my mom has a few reactions where she either says, "That never happened, you're making it up," well, I never called you this thing, or I never did this to you. This never happened. Your memory is scrambled. Like you make up stuff. You're lying. You're making stuff up.
Gaslighting kind of. Yeah. My mom
Oh
does
yeah,
that kind of
just
shit
like
too, yeah.
it's like gaslighting 101. Or she's like, well, you did this, and what we did was very natural. You cut class, or you like didn't do well in school. Of course, like how could we not do this? This is so important. And there is no validation involved. And I struggle for many, many months, if not years, thinking like, is she lying to me? She remembers that she's lying, or she's delusional and she like truly believes none of this ever happened. Her memory's actually good. Or she forgot. She just genuinely, these things were not important enough to her that she just forgot. So there's, for me, and talking to my therapists who are like, Asian parents can be very, very stubborn about this kind of stuff. And for them to admit something like that would be so catastrophically damaging to their ego and their persona that it would just, it might like really, it might just break them a little bit. So it's probably not going to happen. And for me, it's like, well, there's never going to be any validation. And I'm always like hoping, there's always that little hope that it will come. And my therapist, my last therapist, who was very supportive, was like, she's like kind of walking me through things and like being very gentle about things. And my current therapist is just like, she's just like, you're still holding on to hope and you're in denial.
Well, let me ask you this, dude. Like, out of the two which do you prefer? Do you have a preference? Like, do you rather like the tougher, like realistic, like be a realist, stop like moping around, it's never going to change?
I don't know, but I would say I had this conversation with my first therapist where she's like very supportive. She's like very, very nice to me.
What you want in a therapist, I guess.
I think so. And I was like kind of agitated by it because everything my parents told me growing up was that if anyone treats you this way, you cannot trust them. We are doing these mean things to you because we love you and care for you. And if we didn't care about you, we wouldn't do these horrible things to you, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like, I get that sentiment. Like, it's from a good place, but obviously the outcome doesn't justify the methods, right? So,
right. It's a very Machiavellian approach to things. And I get where they're coming from because in their environment, for them to succeed and get to where they were, and they overcame like unimaginable odds to get to the United States and to make a living for themselves. They're very successful now by all metrics, considering where they came from and what they went through. And they only got to here because of this harsh viewpoint. So they cannot divorce their own imagination from this, reality that is to them. So, yeah, like I think we talked about it, my therapist and I, that, why is she doing this? And she's like, you never had anyone in your life that was supportive. And you need this voice right now, and you need to hear this. And that kind of blew my mind a little bit. I'm like, who's been besides my wife in the last, decade or so? And that's like a very different kind of support, because I don't think most normal adults will consider like supporting you this way at like that kind of level. Like it's almost like we need to like reset certain boundaries and reset some expectations that are kind of fundamentally flawed. To be honest, like I get where she's coming from and I still struggle with it because it's hard for me to change my programming at that kind of level, right? And my second therapist, who is more Chinese, I don't know if there's a correlation there. She was born in China, whereas my first therapist is like more Americanized.
I'm sure there's a culture. I mean, the culture and upbringing had to change.
There's a culture difference. Sure. Yeah, my second therapist, who was born in China, lived majority of her life in China. She's like very forced, matter of the fact. And I'm getting like more and more annoyed with her, like with every session. And I'm just like, I think you're getting impatient with me because you're just like, why are you so bitching about this?
See, it's funny because like if I were your therapist, I'd be like, yeah, just keep paying me like, as long as you want. Keep, like, I don't know. It's funny, dude, because this is like taking a page from LinkedIn. Everything I learned about family trauma and how it's impacted enterprise Enterprise UX design.
and how this applies to B2B sales.
Which is funny. Like we've had this conversation before where like, you were shocked by like how happy I was in the last role. And it was just your generic enterprise UX, like very low maturity, just, nothing fancy. No one's ever going to give me design awards, but I was so happy in that job. And I was able to like just sort of say, this is what it is, and this is how I kind of approach like my family. Like my wife all the time, like she's had problems with people in her family. I'm not going to get too, I don't know, it's not my place to talk about it, but she's upset. Like, oh, I wish this and I wish that. And I wish I had a blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, this is what it is. Like you don't, like you're never going to have that relationship with so-and-so. Why just stop trying, like you're just like making yourself more upset by trying. And I feel like in enterprise UX, like I could try and bang my head against the wall, but like these people are never going to change. So it is what it is. Like I'm here for the paycheck. I'm here for this thing. Like I'm not going to push and push and push and drive myself crazy just because you don't want to build software better. And I feel like there's some correlation there. I don't know, man. It's just like why I was able to stay there for so long is just like the pay was great for what I was. I mean, it wasn't like, Silicon Valley salary by any means, but I don't know, dude. I mean, I just like, it's again, going back to the thing with my dad is there something wrong with me? Am I able to detach that much? Is that normal? I don't know if that's normal. I don't know if like other people struggle with that, but I don't know. Something I used to do.
You sound like my therapist. And my therapist has been like telling me this for months now. Like, why do you keep doing this to yourself? Right. And it sounds like my ideal goal with therapy is to reach where you are right now. But I will bring something up because you mentioned this earlier. So I listened to your other podcast episodes. One of them was with Sally Carson.
Yeah.
And you mentioned like, the question you have for yourself, like the existential question is, did I stay too long?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It feels like that. First of all, I think from a mental perspective, you're absolutely in the right. Like why keep doing, why do we torture ourselves? We don't get paid enough to, like, I don't care if it's Silicon Valley salaries, but like nobody gets paid enough to care this much. Like it's torture, right? And the unfortunate thing is that it feels like when you're looking for jobs, you get penalized for not caring about these things because they're looking for some crazy story about how you did this digital transformation and change management and made everything better. And nobody's like thinking about, well, how much did this cost you?
Oh, you're absolutely right, dude. Because it's like I question from a career perspective, it was the right approach, but I'm perfectly happy. So like I guess like for me is I think maybe this is just like with everything else, like even maybe mental health in general. Like, what's your goal in life? To like, is your goal to have a relationship with your parents? Is your goal to be happy? Is your goal to see the change in your organization? Whatever it is, And if the goal is to just like hang out with your family and go on vacations, get paid and be happy with that. Like you can't, is it easy to do both? Because like you said, doing that, what are you sacrificing? There's an opportunity cost for everything, right? There's no such thing as a free lunch. So like, what are you sacrificing and what are you willing to sacrifice is maybe an interesting question to think about. I don't know, dude.
This is like Avengers Endgame.
I still have not seen it. No spoilers. I guess at this point, it's too late for that. I stopped like the X-Men and all the like Marvel movies. There's just so many of them. I just got overwhelmed by the amount I had to keep up with.
I didn't see it for a very long time. And then all the memes came out. And then I put everything together by looking at all the memes. Like, oh, I guess this must have happened. So when I finally did watch it eventually.
Spoilers.
I'm like, okay, well.
Now you're like, now I understand that meme.
Yeah, for sure. I think that question is great. Like, what did it cost you? I think there's a real cost to all of this. And I don't think people really recognize what is the cost of mental health. See,
I love it because we've been talking for 2 hours now.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is like the perfect place to like come full circle. At the end of the day, for me, I think that's like the big, what is the cost? Like if I want to be a successful UX designer, if I want to do all this shit, if I want to be like well-known Silicon Valley, working at like Meta or Facebook or Google or whatever, I don't know, that requires a certain level of effort beyond doing the craft. I mean, you have to move there, you have to spend the time, you have to commit the hours and all that crap. It's not worth it for me. Like the craft is one thing. I could, do the craft, that's fine. But like all the other shit that goes along with it, that's not worth it to me. Like same for like content creator. Like if I want to be I could analyze all the posts and format them perfectly and come up with the best hook and all that shit. And I just don't want to. I don't have any interest in it. And like my posts get like yesterday, I posted something, 17,000 followers. In an hour I had 500 impressions. But like, I just don't give a shit anymore. I'm just like, fuck it. I don't care, and I don't know, man. It's just not worth the effort to like get more likes, get more this and that. It's not worth it to me. And I think like answering, like, I guess like this is easier said than done. And I'm not perfect, obviously, but like, this is how I manage. How other people maybe manage might be totally different. But I ask myself, like, is it worth it to do those other things? Or is right now, is the status quo good enough? And what's interesting too, is I think about that question where bringing up the thing about Sally, with the interview with Sally, like, did I stay there too long? It's all kind of cyclical too when you think about it. Like you could put the effort in for a couple years and then not put the effort in for a couple years. It's not like you have to continue doing the same thing forever. I mean, you could change. Like my old show Retro Time, we talked like our very first episode 3-4 years ago was about those people that work in these giant organizations that just like are perfectly fine with the status quo. They clock in, they do the bare minimum, they clock out, and every 2 weeks they get paid. And that can be very frustrating for like a go-getter who wants to do this and wants to get all this shit done. But for some people, that's all they need. Like they just need a paycheck, and work is the last thing on their list of priorities. Maybe they're spending time with their family, maybe they got hobbies, maybe they got other shit that they're doing. And at the end of the day, like that's what they care about. And if you care about doing this, then like figure out how to get your work done and include that person as much as they need to be included or want to be included, and like leave it at that, or get another job somewhere else where everybody's a, go-getter, fast paced, thrives in ambiguity bullshit that you see in all like these startup, job descriptions. So it could, you could be at different places in your life. And, you could, I don't know, man. I mean, again, I don't have like specific advice. It's just sort of like how I think about it, but it comes and goes, man. It ebbs and flows, and maybe next month I'll care more about content creation, and maybe the month after that I won't anymore. I don't know, it's just, that's how I look at it.
I was talking to an expat who moved to Paris a while back. And
that sounds nice.
They have better labor laws than we do here. And he mentioned that,
True.
I don't know how accurate this is, but I hope the Parisians and the French don't get mad at me, but it sounded like he mentioned something about how it's not cool in France to care so much about your status and like trying to like get so far ahead.
Really?
Like ambition isn't like super cool. And I feel like I'm not Gen Z, obviously, but all these news articles, and I actually don't know enough Gen Z folks to like to say this, but like news articles are saying, oh, the Gen Z's people are more focused on work-life balance and like not doing all that, like throwing away your mental health to achieve these milestones in your career. And I'm like, yeah, that's fucking awesome in many ways. Yeah, but it's like everyone is different. The tragedy is that people aren't true to themselves necessarily, and they talk themselves into doing something that's not really fundamentally aligned with their values, or maybe they don't really know their values just yet, and that's perfectly fine too. Like I still don't really know my values fully. Like I still question a lot of things. If what brings you joy and satisfaction is to like go full throttle and like make stuff and like get into the best companies and make a ton of money, and that's great, go for it. And then if what makes you happy is to like relax and like not like focus on your family and everything else, and like not like get sucked into the bureaucratic bullshit of work, that's great too. And I just think we do so much propaganda marketing for our own values that we get sucked into other people's vortex of like, this is what's super important.
It's funny. You mentioned bringing me joy. That just made me think of when Marie Kondo came out. Does this thing bring me joy? If not, throw it away. I loved that because I actually think about that in terms of relationships and family. And that question, does it bring me joy? That is one of the reasons why I like cut my family. I'm like, they don't bring me any joy. They're done. Like I am done. And it's funny because my wife like keeps stuff, dude. Like she has memory boxes and just like all this shit. She doesn't want to get rid of anything. And I'm just like, that thing, trash. That thing, Goodwill. That thing, donate. That thing, friends. That thing, garbage. That thing, sell on Facebook. And I can just like take a thing and just like get rid of it. And I don't have, it's the same kind of thing like the other stuff, like detach myself. Like I don't have like an attachment to that physical object because most of the time I see that thing and I'm like, where did this come from? Like, where do I have this? I don't even remember the thing that made me want to keep this thing in the first place. And when I was a kid, I used to keep everything, dude. I had like binders of crap. I had like stuff and pictures and all this. And I'm just like, I don't even remember that person. Like, I barely remember that person's name. I don't even remember why we were friends. Why do I have that picture?
Damn.
Stuff like that. And I'm just like, does it bring me joy? Boom, out. I don't know, man. Again, that's made me wonder, like, is that weird? I don't know.
Jeremy has ice in the veins.
I don't know, man. I don't know if that's a bizarre, weird thing or not. But anyway, does it bring you joy? Do you get value out of this stuff? I think that's just something we need to ask ourselves more and be honest, like you said, about answering those questions, you know? And I don't know that it's not the answer to everything, obviously, but I don't know. It's how I approach it, at least. I don't know. Take that for whatever it's worth. All right, Hong. This has been the longest Beyond UX Design episode ever. I feel this is what I'm going to do, man. I am just going to take what we did and just publish it. And that's going to be an interesting, no intro, just all that shit. That's what I'm going to do.
Really? No editing?
Like this. I might edit it for content just like because it might be long, but I don't know. I just going to try it out and see what happens. Do you care?
Not really, but like I'm all about quality sometimes.
Yeah, well, I'll cut some stuff. We'll see. I don't know. I might try to get it down an hour and a half.
Okay.
We'll see. But anyway, so before we get out of here, before we're done, any closing thoughts for anybody out there listening that's maybe struggling, designers that are struggling with mental health? Do you have any advice, anything, closing thoughts for them?
Yeah. So recently I spent a day or two to help a friend set up their mental health care. And what that entailed was, because I had done this enough times for myself, I knew like, how do we find a therapist that's in your network? Because there are all these terminologies that they use, like in-network, out-of-network, benefits.
This is for the Americans, by the way. Anybody listening outside the U.S., you have no idea what we're talking about.
All right. Yeah, for sure. Like it's so messed up in the U.S., right? Like mental health care is so expensive. You can easily spend $200 or $300 per hour per week. And you want to find somebody who's in-network, but pretty much, I don't know what the percentage is, but I would say the vast majority of therapists are not operating in insurance networks. Like they're out of network. They don't have an agreement in place to charge a set amount of money and to build an insurance company for like 80% or whatever it is. That's part of the insurance carrier's benefit plan, right? It's really hard to find somebody who's in network, who has an existing agreement with your insurance carrier to bill you a certain amount. Usually they say, well, check the insurance carrier's website, like United Healthcare, right? These websites are just terrible. The filters, they suck. It's so hard to find anything. You just see a list of names and addresses. Sometimes you don't see how far away they're from you. You don't know anything about them besides like their name or like what language they might speak. And the information is not updated. So I would call like 80% of the phone numbers I call, they're just like, oh, this doctor is no longer with us anymore. They left months ago or years ago, and it just never got updated. I think fortunately for us, I used the website called Alma, ALMA. That was really good. So it's kind of plug. They're not paying me or anything. But Alma's website was great for New York City. For you, not so much in the Cincinnati area. So I think we only saw but in New York, we had dozens and dozens. And it was accurate. It was updated, and you had a pretty good idea based on profile what kind of therapist this person was, like what ethnicity, if that's important to you, gender, etc., and what areas they focus on, what modalities they use to treat your, whatever issues that you're having. That was really helpful because prior to that, I used Psychology Today or I used internal websites, and internal websites are, again, not updated often. Psychology Today, they had this issue where the majority of people I reached out to would say stuff like, you're in network. But when I contacted them, they said, oh, we work with your insurance as an out-of-network provider. And I found that super kind of dishonest because it's a binary thing. You either have an agreement with the insurance carrier and you have an agreed upon billing practice with them, or you don't have an agreement, which means you are an out-of-network provider. So for them to say, we work with, United Healthcare or Cigna as an out-of-network provider, that's like saying we don't have a contract with them, but it doesn't mean anything. And the reason why they do that is because one of the first filters, and this is kind of like putting your UX hat on, is that when you look for a therapist, you try to find someone who's in network because you can pay way less with that for the same level of care. That's why they write all these names down, because they know that people are going to search by United Healthcare or Cigna or Blue Cross Blue Shield. So they can show up near the top of the search results. that's why I think psychology today is like not the greatest place to find a talk therapist. And you should use something like Alma or something that's like a little bit more straightforward and honest about what insurances are being taken by these doctors or therapists. I guess the advice is, one is, if you are good at doing this kind of stuff because you have experience in helping or experience in looking for a therapist for yourself, try to take some time to help others who might be struggling, because the friction or impetus of getting a therapist for the first time is so overwhelming for the average American that most people just don't even get started. And nobody understands, like, what does it mean, right? You got to call them and they don't always explain it properly. So if you do know how this works, then help others, volunteer some time to get people set up so they can get started, pay it forward. It's like super important. And it's kind of part of like why the UX for this sucks so much. That's one thing you can do. Other things you can do is try to like read up a bit on how insurance works, like things like out of pocket, deductibles, right? And also the concept of out of like maximum allowed cost, because that will get you. So Google that. Yeah, it's always hardest to get started, but once you do, I think things get easier. Like it's not like a silver bullet. Like I'm going through therapists one by one, trying to find one that's the right one for me, and it's going to take a bit of time. But it feels good to try, even if they're not the perfect or right therapist for you. It helps you understand certain things better. Like, why is it they're not great for me? Like, what is it that's like helping me understand or helping me? So even if you disagree with them and their methods or whatnot, at least you learn more about yourself to see like why this is not working for me.
Yeah, it's like what you said. I think that's the really interesting thing is, again, American healthcare system. If the friction, like for me, the friction is getting past that first hurdle. Once you do that and figure that out, I imagine the next time and the third time and the fifth, fourth, fifth, whatever, is going to be that much easier. Just get past it. Find somebody to help you. Hong was nice enough to like walk me through how he found somebody to talk to and all that stuff. And I still haven't booked it yet, but made it a lot easier for me and less overwhelming for sure. And I don't know. It's just America. I don't know why we just love this healthcare system and refuse to change it. Doesn't make any sense to me. All right, Hong. Well, this has been awesome. I enjoyed this thoroughly. This was one of my favorite conversations I've had in a very long time. And I hope people listening got something out of it. If nothing else, just hear what two other random people have to say about this stuff. And, nobody's the same. Everybody's different. But hopefully you got some takeaways. So thanks for coming on, dude. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I hope people talk about it. I think it's so important to talk about what you're going through, talk about your feelings with other folks. To me, I think that's what networking is in many ways. It's not like, how do I find a job? Sometimes it's more just like, hey, I'm going through this stuff. Here's how I'm feeling. Oh, you're feeling the same way. I think that's so important. And especially among men, I think guys, just talking to other guys can be really good.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's do it again sometime.
Sure.
Don't be a stranger.
All right.
All right, dude. Thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You didn't talk about Trevor at all today, by the way.
I missed the guy.
Trevor never came up once.
I missed the guy.
Oh, Trevor. We need to get together. All three of us.
Yeah, little rat fucker. I miss him.
That's a great way to end it. All right, we're out.